Finicky. Okay, good morning. Although we can't see ourselves. All right.
You see me.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunshine Coast Regional District Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, May the 14th. We are here in the boardroom of the Sunshine Coast Regional District, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are in the territories of the Sechelt and the Squamish Nations. We have an agenda before us. Do I see any changes to the agenda? Do I see a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved. Seconded. All in favor? The agenda is adopted. First up is a delegation from Cassandra Fletcher, Executive Director of the One Straw Society. Welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you. Is that okay? Distance? Thank you, Chair and directors and staff for having me today. My name is Cassandra Fletcher. I'm here representing One Straw Society and the Sunshine Coast Food Systems Network, and to chat about the recommendations that we recently submitted to integrate food systems language into our official community plans. You guys have a very daunting task ahead of you to try and navigate a lot of opinions about this document. So thank you very much for your work and for hearing us today. In March, we submitted this 13-page document found in today's agenda, which outlines concise policy recommendations to plan for the future of food here. So food systems work is an upstream thing. It's a bit different from food security work. Both are super important, they just have different entry points. We often compare this to the analogy of people who keep falling into a raging river. Emergency work is about pulling the drowning people out safely from the river. However, systems work is about looking upstream and trying to figure out why it is that people keep falling into the river. And so when we analyze this, we might decide we want to put up signage, better warning signs, shore up the river banks, whatever it might be to stop people from falling in. So this is like food systems work. We can help people today by providing emergency food through food banking and subsidized food box programs, but it's not going to solve the major systemic issues of the fact that vast majority, well, not majority, but a very large number of people on the Sunshine Coast and Canada as a whole may be working full-time, but they're still struggling to put nutritious food on the table. We all need food to survive. Food needs healthy soil. Food needs reliable water and seed and land that can be accessed by people who actually want to grow it and can afford to live here and can make a reasonable living doing that work. And so this isn't just about agriculture. The food system's about equipment and shared infrastructure, children's food programs, skill building, community connections for support, and it needs policy, this kind of thing that we're talking about today, that empowers local food on local land, and it needs a means to get all of that onto our plates. It doesn't matter if that's food at home, food at fancy restaurants, schools, or in a hospital. We as a region are incredibly vulnerable. We are not food secure. We produce approximately 1% of the food that the Sunshine Coast eats, and therefore we rely almost exclusively on barges, food from barges shipped from across planet Earth. This delicate food chain is constantly at risk. The past few years alone, we've seen all of this, the impacts of pandemics, tariff disputes, wars in other countries, and a dismal ferry system have all affected our food supply. When other regions can rely on a local food supply, our food system struggles to get footing locally with ridiculous land costs, incredibly high labor and input costs, along with loss due to drought and water restrictions, wildlife damage, and people who buy fertile farmland and turn it into something else. A couple of years ago, the SCRD endorsed the Sunshine Coast Food Charter. It was a high-level, values-based document that essentially said, we recognize the importance of food in this region, and we're going to prioritize that. So this document supports and follows up on that document. It proposes that food systems be strategically embedded into all of the sections of our community plan, that we consider food when we talk about land use, and that food is a part of our economic development, and food is considered in emergency planning, climate resilience, social planning, all of that stuff. At the heart of these recommendations, it's that food should be considered and treated as essential infrastructure, just like we plan for transportation, waste management, and housing. We need to intentionally plan for the systems that will feed us. So some of the key recommendations include zoning and protection of farmland, strategic support for blossoming small and mid-scale farms and businesses, enabling shared food infrastructure, large stuff like the benefits that a large-scale food storage facility might provide in terms of benefiting school food programs, local charities, food businesses, and beyond collectively. So one of the recommendations that we particularly hope that the SCRD will consider is the creation of a standing food systems advisory committee. This is particularly important since the disbanding of the Agricultural Advisory Committee and long ago the Food Policy Council. Right now, as far as I'm aware, there's no panel that's providing expert advisement to staff or board on the food system outside of our organization and the good folks that contributed to this document. Many of those folks would be keen to continue advising because it's a win-win. These recommendations are just intended to be a constructive resource. They're informed by research and intentionally or internationally recognized best practices. This isn't fluff, it's not fringe ideas. It aligns with OCPs that are already adopted in communities across the province and across the country. There are some great resources and links at the end of the document to other OCPs that have done a great job of embedding food systems language into their plans. Those would be a great resource for you guys to take a look at. We have incredible opportunities here. We have lots of fertile land, we have strong community networks, we have Indigenous knowledge systems, amazing local farmers, and rapidly increasing engagement and interest by the community in the food systems sector. The question isn't whether it'll impact the well-being of our communities. They already do. It's whether we will proactively build the conditions for resilience and a thriving food system, or if we continue to react to the pressures and crises as they pop up. This is one of those, that old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We're a registered charity full of advocates and experts and educators passionate about the future of food, but we're in need of ongoing donations and grants to keep this good work going, and we can't do it in the thickets. We need guiding policy and plans that clear that path so the impact and the reach of this work will grow and can help feed us all. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm open to questions or thoughts, and that's it.
Thank you very much. And, okay, I'm looking to the directors. Director Bax.
Thank you, through the chair. Cassandra, Ms. Fletcher. This Food Systems Advisory Committee, have you considered any of the members?
Yeah.
I have a candidate for you. Are you familiar with Chris Hergesheimer?
Indeed. If you look at the last page of this document, you can see all of the members of this food systems network that were involved in developing this document. Dr. Hergesheimer was, of course, one of them, and many, many others. We're very lucky to have a lot of incredible advisors in this area, including farmers and leaders in the business sector, food business, restaurant owners. We've got the head of UBC's Faculty of Land and Food Systems that is a Sunshine Coast resident. The head and director of the SFU Food Systems Lab is a resident of the Sunshine Coast. We have a lot of amazing people, policy experts that have all been involved and would love to continue in various ways.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
Thank was actually waiting for Director Gabius to raise her hand. Maybe she's the finale today or something. So that was a fairly aggressive presentation by you, which I appreciate, because you're it was. You're really clear to us that there's issues and we need to pay attention. And that's fair. You're sort of like a canary reminding us, the canary saying, we need to be careful because we aren't doing enough. We're not paying enough attention to our food sources and how we get it. I remember standing up in 2008-9 as mayor of Sechelt telling the community that we only had 3 to 7 days of food on the coast. If the barging that you reference and the ferries that you quite clearly said were dismal, and we're dealing with that. If they don't get food to us, that's our supply. Think of the dead of winter. We can grow our own during the summer. So you're reminding us of something I talked about them, but I will say I was very clear to the 200 people that I was speaking to that we had huge problems then, and I don't think it's gotten better. So that's why I'm glad that you're being really clear to us again and being the canary. I look to local sustainability, as you referenced, that we need to do more of. We need to make sure that land is available for growing and continuing to grow, but also water systems that can feed that land. So that's a big thing. My other concern is, I just wanted to mention to you, is natural food versus manufactured food. You and I talked about an issue when you came in, and if we had more local food and grown food versus manufactured food, I think we'd be healthier. So I think there's those issues. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've looked at this, is food prices for natural food is very high. So not only have we had inflation over the last number of years in food, probably doubling over the last 15 years, but natural food, produce, fruits, has went way up. And that's how we stay healthy, yet it's costing people who don't have a lot of money 50 to 60% over the last probably 7 years to be healthy. So those are just 3 things that I wanted to mention you. Thanks, Chair, for the latitude there, but those are my concerns through to you, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Director Newster. Director Gabius.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Fletcher, for this great presentation. I'm passionate about this, and I agree with everything that you said. I'm going to have to listen to your presentation again because there's so many good nuggets in there, and thank you for the document as well. I do have a question. The Sunshine Coast seems so unique to me in the challenges that we face. We're ferry dependent. The cost of land is really high. It's in the research that was done. Was there any other municipalities or regional districts that you thought were very similar, like we're facing the same challenges that we are facing, and how did they become more proactive if they have? What kind of good, innovative things have you seen in places that look a bit like us?
Thank you for that question. I think I could back up a ways with some of the initiatives that we're doing, but as one example, the tiny farm that exists in Roberts Creek behind the Gumboot is a food hub. We're a sanctioned food hub by the United Way of BC and supported by Vancouver Coastal Health. That food hub, that tiny farm, is actually a prototype. It's a pilot project for a much larger farm commons initiative that we are working on in the background around developing a Sunshine Coast farm commons. One of the biggest barriers that regions like the Gulf Islands, which, to answer your question, are very similar to us in that they're ferry dependent and face very limited regions that are arable and increasing pressure from the small urban communities on those islands. There are some areas of Vancouver Island, but Vancouver Island is quite agriculture heavy, actually. The Gulf Islands and the Sunshine Coast are quite unique in that regard. Certainly northern communities are facing that at even greater scale than southern regions like the Sunshine Coast. The Farm Commons idea is being implemented in a lot of those communities. There's an amazing program on Pender Island called the Lifeboat Academy. There's the Salt Spring Island Farmland Trust. There are a number of different models where community has taken ownership of community assets, focusing primarily on arable land to collectively grow over time. One of our biggest risks is that our food is being provided by privately owned individuals on privately owned land by private families. And all it takes is one situation, one injured back, one terminal illness, one divorce, and everything changes. That land may still be arable, but it's not being farmed anymore. And that is an ongoing issue, in addition to the encroachment of developments and people turning land into other more lucrative means, such as, tourism is obviously the biggest one. So I think that collective farmland ownership is one of the biggest things, so that an organization or a municipality or regional district can protect that land in perpetuity, regardless of who's actually farming it. The other resources are other things that we are already doing, things like collective tool and equipment sharing through tool libraries, regional crop planning initiatives for farms, so that we're working as a collective of growers and producers, which we do through the Sunshine Coast Food Box program. Yeah, lots of other ones as well.
Thank you. Director Bax, one more.
One more. Local government is limited in how we can assist in this endeavor. This absolutely critical part of living on the Sunshine Coast is being able to have access to food. I know that we can do things through zoning and through our water supply, and that's and outside of that, I'm really at a loss to see where we could help. I know that if we had public land that was arable land, one of the processes we could go through is a long-term lease. I think that it's better to advocate to higher government, the Seychelles Nation and the provincial government to advocate for long-term lease for farmers on land that is useful. But outside of zoning and assuring water supply for our local farmers, I'm at a loss as to what local government can do.
Thank you.
There are 11 pages of recommendations.
There are, and I'm just going to comment that some of those recommendations have already been implemented. Some of them do not apply to our regional district. So it would be helpful to have a short list of priorities, because the current OCP process is focusing only on, we didn't throw it wide open. We are focusing on a couple of critical paths forward on housing and environment. You mentioned that we plan transportation. Actually, we don't, because transportation is the responsibility of the province. It's almost 20 years ago. Is it? No, it's 10 years ago. The SCRD gotten involved in a process for a regional transportation plan and produced one, although it's not our responsibility. But unfortunately, we ended up with a document that's been sitting on the shelf ever since, because we have no ability to actually action any of the recommendations in the plan, so it ends up being pretty frustrating. However, we appreciate that the importance of food. Farms are critical in Area E, and I am a big fan of my local farms. I shop at all the roadside stands, which were legalized in Bylaw 722 in about 4 years ago. Director Stanford.
Yeah, and following up to that, I just want to say how much this particular document is so well thought out. It really gives us all the resources that we need to see this as a lens, even though, as Director McMahon said, that we are focusing on two particular pillars with this OCP review, how does it fit into the environment? I think that is how I'm seeing this, and how we can build awareness with our communities. And we're all at different levels of farm and food awareness and ability to provide access to land. My area F, has lots of land, but much of it isn't as arable as, say, other parts of the coast. So how we frame it within the context of the environment and not make it competitive against other policies and goals, but to incorporate it within that. Do you have a way of approaching aspects of environmental conservation? How does it fit into that framework, or have you contemplated it in that direction?
Yeah, thank you. The food system is obviously deeply tied to this earth. This is what we rely on to survive. So there are whole schools of thought and study and research around the impacts of our ecology, forestry, watershed management, foreshore management, all of that kind of stuff, and the really dramatic impacts on the food system. We'd be happy to provide you with really concise data and information that supports that. There's a little bit in this document, but there's much more. It's also been studied and reported on by the United Nations Sustainable Food Systems Documentation, which is a great resource. But of course, even Canada as a nation has a food policy which talks about ecological impacts and resources.
Thank you. Director Gabius.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think it also fits with the housing pillar, I think, in a way, because we keep, with the OCP, we talk about how we grow, where we grow, but I like how, Ms. Fletcher, you talked about food growing or food systems as essential infrastructure. We need food as much as we need, well, maybe not as much, but we need the infrastructure to allow for growth, and that's got to be part of it. And I was happy to hear you refer to the food charter that was adopted. So I have a lot of questions for staff, which we're going to be seeing later, as to how we can, like whether that document was integrated in the work, and like how we can weave that throughout the OCP without, like making it a separate pillar or like a whole other chapter, but how can we include some of the language? And yeah, thank you again for all these recommendations. That gives us something really tangible to work with. So big thank you to everybody who was part of the work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Last chance, folks. Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation and for the submission to the OCP process.
Thank you.
It is appreciated.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is the first of 2026 seasonal water supply updates. Over to GM Rosenboom and Communications Manager Buckley.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. And there it is. So today is the first of several seasonal water supply updates for this year. I thought to start with a picture of what the lake looked like, Chapman Lake looked like this Monday. That's the left picture. And if you're wondering what the yellow line is in the water, those are buoys that are required to be there because of dam safety regulations. So from as of last year until eternity, we will have a yellow line in our regular Chapman pictures. The picture on the right is our Get Ready for Summer campaign flyer that was distributed earlier this year. More about that later in the presentation. So, because this is the first presentation of the year, I wanted to provide an overview of where things are at in terms of increasing our seasonal water supply. Of course, the board adopted last year the water strategy, which outlines specific actions and objectives related to increasing water supply and reducing demand within our community. It talks about implementation of volumetric billing, it talks about leak resolution, but it also spells out actions related to diversifying our water supply and increasing it. Of course, Church Road Wellfield is online since 2023. Langdale Wellfield is currently being developed. Cecil Hospital well is in a more feasibility state, and we recently were able to complete overhaul of our Chester well, which actually resulted in a 50% increase of the production of that well. So all that to say, for this year, Church Road is already activated more in the background because as a backup force, because we're doing some major upgrades to our treatment plant. Chester well is back online for the same reason, but at a higher capacity. We're having ongoing conversations with the nation and the province about our ongoing use of our siphon systems in Edwards Lake and Chapman Lake. And Harris Lake is prepared to be used as a backup resource if so required for McNeil Lake in South Bender. So where are we at in terms of water conservation? Almost all properties now on the coast have water meters and get insight in our actual monthly use by or signing up to our monthly water use update or to sign up on mysrd.ca for the people for the users in the Bender system, North and South Bender, which are already on volumetric billing. So we are, of course, ongoing leak resolution efforts, both on the private side as well on our own water systems. And, of course, volumetric billing in North and South Bender has been implemented as of January 1st. Picture on the right is a private side leak that we were happy to get fixed within a reasonable amount of time. It was noticeable that there was something leaking there. And now turning it over to Manager Buckley to talk about our Get Ready for Summer campaign.
Thanks, Shane Rosenboom. So our Get Ready for Summer campaign went out at the end of April. 16,000 mailouts to water users across the coast. On one side of the flyer, we had simple steps to water stewardship this summer. So some conservation tips and advice. As well, we had a graph, which was very popular in the past, which outlined water use inside the home and gave people some insight into, what a full washing load is in the way of water, but as well what an hour sprinkling is too. On the far side then, we have the water conservation regulations, and that's the image that you're seeing there. We've already seen a fair increase in visits to the water conservation webpage on our website. It's the second most viewed page since this went out, which is a little bit different to prior years. So I think it's definitely resonated. As well, we have combined a lot of the resources which would have lived across maybe 3 to 4 different pages on our website in previous years into one page, a water stewardship page. And it's a very resource-focused page, that one is. So, 16,000 mailouts total to water users across the coast.
Thank you. Now, what's going on with respect to our current water supply? I think it's not a surprise to anybody that it has been warm and dry last several weeks on the coast and in most of Canada. This is the most recent projection for the upcoming 3 months from Environment Canada as of April 30. And the more dark red the color is, the higher the likelihood that it will be warmer than normal summer or last couple of 3 months. So you can see that the South Coast is definitely on that list of having a warmer summer. The amount of rain usually is somewhat connected to the amount of the temperature, but they're especially with an El Nino in an El Nino situation that where we currently are in. It can also be that we have some heavy downpours over the summer, which of course would be very appreciated. But a 3 months outlook in terms of precipitation is not being able to be provided. Usually precipitation outlooks are only 5 to 7 days ahead that are very reliable. But it will be definitely a warm summer, at least start of the summer. What has been the impact on the snowpack? Chapman Lake, as you can see here, the lowest, the blue line, the blue bars are the snow water equivalent, so that's the amount of water that's actually within the snowpack. It has been extremely low. We've never seen it so low. And these are the data on April, end of April, so a couple of weeks ago. Since these snow measurements were taken, we had some pretty warm days. So hence the picture showed even less snow available than it's depicted here. Similar situation at Adverse Lake, very low amount of snow. What does it mean in terms of calling our stages? Just a reminder of when are we calling stages within the different water systems. For Chapman, when the water stops flowing over the dam. And currently, that's not the case yet. So that's why we haven't called stage 2 yet. And I already received some questions from community members, why are we not in stage 2? This is why, because we don't need to yet. While, for example, other local governments that are in a different, where the water supply is differently organized, they already went to stage 2. Suspender is primarily based on the actual use, and currently that's also still below the threshold for calling stage 2. Eachborn, it's primarily based on the conditions of the wells, and they're still good. That also has to do with the still lower amount of residents at Eastbourne that will increase over the summer months, of course. And all the other systems usually we're not going to stage 2. So there might be something really unusual happen there to call stage 2. The graph on the right shows when stage 2 has been called in last several years, last decade. And the earliest that it's been in was early June in 2019. So the outlook for the summer, as indicated, it will be warm, but as Manager Buckley just confirmed as well, we've been communicating with the community for several years of what to do. So we feel that the community knows what to do, and on our side, we're ready to see whatever the summer brings us. Water conservation regulations, of course, will depend on the timing and the amount of rain we get in the upcoming weeks and months. However, compared to 2022, when we had that severe drought, our water supply has increased, and I think our community water demand has definitely been reduced due to leaks being addressed and outreach and education efforts. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, GM Rosenboom. Director Bax.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, we have put a lot of work into putting in these water meters, and they have paid us back in leak detection and resolving of leaks. Is there an estimate as to how many liters a day that we have saved since the installation of these water meters?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I don't have the exact amount available, but last year in October, we staff presented a report to the board that indicated what the impact was on the leak resolution efforts on the water supply last year. And at that time, it was concluded that last year we saved about 7% of our seasonal water supply due to the fact that we were able to address leaks.
Sure.
So 7% is awesome. I've done a little bit of research here, and it says that that the Chapman system uses about 16.5 to 18.5 million liters a day, and that now with these two, with the new well and the improved well that you talked about earlier in this presentation, that adds another almost 5 million liters a day to our supply. And with leak detection at another 7%, I'd say we're in really a lot better shape than we were. I mean, a lot better shape than we were in 2022. And I want to thank the board and staff for the work that's been done.
Thank you. Director Toth and then Director Stanford.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, staff, for the update. I appreciate the picture of the lake. I think it's a tangible thing that our community can see and can recognize what's going on up there. The question that I've got is one that I've tried to answer as I've heard it in community, but I'm wondering if staff could just confirm. There have been some folks that have commented on water flowing up near the Selma Reservoir on Reservoir Road and under the power lines there, with a lot of concern that that's potable water. And I don't believe that's the case, but I just would like staff to speak to it so that more people can hear the answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. When I can confirm that it's not potable water, what's flowing over the road. What's very unfortunate that it's flowing over the road right now. As part of our treatment process, we have to flush our filters at our wastewater as a water plant. And together with some other water sources that are generated at the plant, all that water is sent to ponds at the bottom of close to the power line at the bottom of the access road to the treatment plant, and those ponds are currently overflowing. They were constructed as being infiltration ponds to water to be infiltrated in the ground, and those are currently saturated. As of 3 days ago, we have made some infrastructure upgrades that allow us to test an alternative means of addressing the water supply with the mine site, with the collaboration of the mine. And we're going to trial that in upcoming weeks. So if that's successful, that might become our permanent solution. But that will require some further agreements to be put in place between us, between the SRD and the mine. But we're definitely working with support of the Seychelles Nation on a solution for that, a long-term solution. But I confirm it's not potable water that's flowing there.
Thank you. That's really good news because that's been a problem for a long time. Director Stanford.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a few questions from community members in Area F that are using Langdale Well, Soames Well. Are they going to be part of the Chapman system water restrictions going forward, or do they have a separate, do they look at separate stages? Because historically, they've not had restrictions to the same rate as other people, and they're just wondering where they fit into this.
Thank you for the question. Langdale Well is still a separate system, unconnected to the Chapman system. That might change as part of our, once we have the Langdale Well field developed. But how that actually all works out is still to be confirmed as part of the design phase. For Granthams and Soames, they are part of the overall Chapman system in terms of water regulations.
Go ahead.
So just to be clear, that people on the Langdale system currently can expect to get different stage restrictions as compared to the rest of the coast.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you for the presentation. It's quite informative, actually. I got a comment and then a question. One of our neighbors had a creek that didn't ever quit running down the side of her road. And I suggested that she call the RD, and she did, and it was chlorinated water, but it was in front of her meter. It was on the main. And the RD was there in a few days and fixed the darn thing. And now she's got a creek with no water in it, or a ditch with no water in it. But it was very impressive. I thought I should share that with you. My other question is the Harris Lake. The dam that we have on Harris Lake will only allow around 20% of the available water. If we don't have a 200-day drought this year, we probably won't need anything more. But if we do need more, is there a plan to get at the other 80% if we need to?
Thank you for the question. We have a defined amount of water that we can take from Harris Lake as part of our water license. And I currently can't confirm if it's 20% or more. But we have, the staff have visited Harris Lake and have confirmed that if required, we can take the water that we could take out of Harris Lake this summer. And at the same time, last year the board deferred the project to this year to assess whether, and part of the project includes an assessment if the outlet structure of Harris Lake could be improved. And that project is currently in initial procurement stage. So we hope to have that project completed later this year or the next year as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
Thanks, Chair. I was looking for a little more information on that flow that Chair Toth referred to as to why it's not, why it can be used for irrigation in some sense, although it's probably because of its placement, but I think we just need to, going forward sustainably, start looking at all water as usable water, whether we treat it or not, because it can be used for irrigation. So I hope we look at that, but I wasn't clear why it's cast off water. Water is precious. My question, though, is through you, Chair, to staff, is how often will we be hearing from staff this summer? What is the plan from communications and staff, of course, on our water issue in terms of how we're doing? People know because people have access to information like we do that it's going to be a hot, dry summer. I'm hoping it's not like 22 where it goes late, because that's where we see the problems. But are we going to, because of the nature of our summer here, be hearing from staff every few weeks, Madam Chair, in terms of giving us updates? Because I think the community wants to know, and I would like to know, and also to use those opportunities to remind the community to harvest their own water, as they should have been doing, but also to be careful at home, because we need water for drinking and or firefighting. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to answer part of your question. If I get it wrong, then I will be corrected by staff. But the process of cleaning the water in the water treatment plant uses a flocculant that is aluminum-based. And the aluminum remaining in that water is potentially toxic to fish. So you have to be very careful what you do with it. But if I'm wrong, then GM Rosenboom will tell me.
Thank you, Chair. You're not wrong. There's an aluminum-based product base, and that also attaches itself to the particles, to the sediment in that water. And in terms of the question, every drop of water is valuable. The pilot process that we're currently initiating with Heidelberg would allow for the water actually to be used as part of their process. So it would actually allow the water to be used within the mine site. So that actually, I think, serves the purpose of that every drip of water is valuable. Thank you.
And then through the chair, to your question, Director Inkster, outside of our regular news releases which speak to stage calling into the community, which was quite a prescribed process that we've done in the past, we do have an entire water conservation campaign that goes out across social media, and in addition, outreach to community groups too. On top of that, then we will be looking to work with local media, and then obviously regional media if they are looking to come to us to talk water. We're always open to chatting about that too. So yeah, like in addition to just the regular stage calling, there's a very focused campaign that we will run through the summer months, and we tie in very closely with operations. Our communications team does. So if they are up at the lake and they are getting pictures, we do post them too, right, up to Facebook. And I'm sure you may remember, back in 2022, we were very consistent in that approach, and really wanting to inform the community, not only about what the situation was from water supply from our perspective, but what we hope that they could do to help us out through the summer months.
Thank you. And we will be having monthly updates at Cal, I believe. I just have a quick question. Do we have a photo somewhere of the water flowing over the dam? Because that's a question we get a lot, and it would be handy to have a photo that we could share on social media. Any further questions? Director Gabius.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And strange state of affair when I find myself really hoping for a January this year. I'm really hoping it rains next month. Really great information. Thank you so much to staff for bringing all that data to us. Not happy news necessarily, but really good to see so that we can brace ourselves and prepare ourselves. And it really encouraged with the conversations that I'm having in the community, people in tune with what's happening, understanding that we're looking at potentially a super El Nino, and people really the change that's been happening in the past years, thanks to the communications, has been really, really great. So really big thank you to the community. This is a community effort. Things are different nowadays. And my question is, a few years back, we did have a dashboard on the landing page, I believe, or on the water page that showed how much water, like percentage of water available from Chapman Lake. And I received great comments from the community on that. Like, it was a very simple, easy to understand graph to see like the state of affairs. So is there a thought of bringing this back this year, knowing that we might be going into a very hot and dry summer? And maybe like with a bit more information too on the other water supply sources like Church Road Well and Shasta Well. Thanks.
Through Chair, thank you for your question. In 2022, when we had that dashboard, we hadn't Church Road at the time. It wasn't online, so it was very straightforward for us to be able to speak to community use from that one source. In 2023, I reached out to, I want to say, maybe 10 local governments up here, and in addition to folks in the States who've been dealing with this for many, many years, and asked them what they were doing to show this, and there is no one prescribed way to do it. Also say that we have had internal discussions about that, and our intent would be that should we escalate through stages, that there will be a trigger point where we will look to reintroduce something like that. It may not be as straightforward as just showing the lake level. It could be a dashboard that essentially shows the contribution from Church and also from Chester as well. So as opposed to showing something that shows where water is remaining, it may speak to where the community use is being taken from. That makes sense? Yeah.
Thank you. Really interesting. Director Stanford.
So speaking of Church Road, will there be a heads up when it comes online? Will we let the community know? Because is there more noise associated with when the pumps are running? I'm just trying to give that community a bit of time to understand that when that pump goes.
Thank you for the question. Church Road is already running. We had to do some we are doing some major upgrade at our Chapman treatment plant, and that required us to have Church Road already online as a backup source. And given the time it takes to put it online and turn it back, we currently have it running at a very small volume in the background. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking around. I am not seeing any further questions, so thank you very much for the update. We look forward to more updates, hopefully good news, but we're not in control of that. So next up, we have item 4.2, Universal Water Metering Phase 3 Project Amendments. And over to staff for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Staff have put a few slides together just in advance of the report. I'm just sharing screen. Before we speak to the challenges, we just wanted to put the scale of the project in general into context. To date, we've installed, although it's cut off by the screen there, 4,142 meters, approximately. About 90% of those have been completed with like the standard methods, easily located and regular meter installs. The remaining unresolved services represent the most complex remaining locations, the most difficult to locate on the steepest slopes and the most obscured. We currently have 132 installations remaining. That's updated since the report was written. We've recently had some successful locates. We currently have 16 recent successful and 116 unresolved locates that make up that 132 number. A key takeaway is that the project has transitioned from a high volume standard process of installation to dealing with the exceptions and all the deviations. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So there's a lot on this slide, but in Q4 of 2025, the team was working to maximize the amount of standard installs we could complete while Neptune still had available manpower on the coast. And the intent of this was to minimize the impact on operations staff and the need for their time to deal with all of these edge cases and exceptions. To facilitate this, staff put in a significant amount of time to locate as many of the difficult ones as possible. And the delivery model transitioned from simply dealing with Neptune on the project to having to deal with local subcontractors to facilitate the difficult locates, excavations and vac trucks and that kind of thing. It also increased restoration costs. As we dig bigger holes to try and find things, we have to put a lot more stuff back. The primary challenge here for us was that project controls and reporting systems weren't able to keep up with the nature of the changing work. And it took some time for us to identify the escalating cost per locate. As you can see, it was a pretty quick rise. The green line on the graph represents the cost per singular locate. So we dealt with 600, or we're dealing with, some 600 odd difficult to locate meters and services, but the vast majority of those were dealt with before the end of the year, and costs didn't really begin to escalate until the last quarter of 2025. And when we recognized that, we did our best to try and mitigate costs, and you can see the line start to drop at the end there. And we paused and regrouped, and that's why we're here before you today. Just some examples of the situations that we've been dealing with. We've had services that were completely obscured or buried under concrete driveways. We've had water services that were found. The blue one that's represented there in the photo is actually very deep inside that hedge and about 4 trees back in that hedge.
all of which needed to be removed in the process of installing the meter. Yeah, the more mature the landscape and the more exploration we have to do to find the meters, it just continues to increase the cost. Oh. Sorry. There we go. Other mitigation measures that staff were already undertaking, wherever possible, the large services for multifamily dwellings and commercial dwellings when suitable mechanical facilities were available, we opted for inside installations to both reduce the number of large meter vault installs and also the amount of groundwork that would be required to locate and install those services outside. While the bylaw allows for inside installations where outside isn't feasible, we've opted for inside installs only where we've been able to find a dedicated mechanical room with suitable drainage to minimize our liability or risk to damage to a building if SCRD installed infrastructure fails. And that's questions or comments if we want to from there, and then we could talk about the report.
Thank you. I'm going to go in with a question, and then I'm going to turn over the chair to Director Lee, because unfortunately I have a migraine headache coming on, so I can't concentrate properly. But my question is, some of the complex installations, are they associated with known areas that we have fire flow problems where we're probably going to have to go in and deal with the infrastructure anyway? So, like, we don't want to dig a hole today and then go back in a year or two and dig the hole again. So is there a connection between this and the fire flow plan?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I would say the answer to that is not really. There might be occasionally, there might be an overlap. The fire flow upgrades might not always require digging of water mains to be exposed. While in this case, we're even not exposing the water main, we're exposing the service connection between the water main and the house. So there's, even though it might be in the same area, that there might be some hard to install, some difficult installations to be completed. And there might be an overlap with the fire flow area, with the fire flow deficiency in the area. It might not mean that in terms of actual work on the ground, there is an overlap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions? Oh, yes, Director Inkster.
Thanks, Chair. The couple of things here. The cost of the ladder installations sort of reminds me of doing a census. The initial census costs for the government of Canada are very low, and then you're going after the people that won't do them or the people you can't find. This is like this. People that are difficult to do and or the pieces that you're difficult to find. The graph is a really helpful illustrator from staff of how the costs have risen. And I'm hoping that this is one of the last times that they come back to us to say, can you increase the budget? Because that's happened a few times and it affects all our users. And we're trying to hit a point where with the new volumetric billing that people start to maybe save some money with our increasing costs in our world. So I'm hoping the last time it comes back to you. But my question through you, Chair, is to staff is, is there a water meter installation club? And I'm a little bit facetious in that, but what I mean is there best practice discussions that water purveyors have had with one another through conferences, etc., to learn what we can in future do better, because we're going to continue to do sustainability water programs, but what we may have been able to do better with ours in terms of installations and making sure that it's done. The rising costs are we have to do it, and it's been really important for our overall water service with the new source tapping, but we have to get better at these things because of the rising costs. Thanks. best practices? Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair, there are, and then your metaphor is very apt with the census. Part of the challenges that we've encountered here, and relating that back to the best practices, in the install of all the new meters that we've put in, we now have GPS location information digitally documented for every service location now. Previously, some of the records that we're working with are old paper service cards from meters that, or sorry, from services installed in the 70s and the 80s, where references to property lines are vague at best. So that's created some of the challenges. In terms of flagging risks of meter installs and the escalating costs, we've also been discussing that with other communities. And the older your infrastructure, the more challenging those legacy installs become. And the more services you've had installed with more modern restraints, like are included in the new bylaw that we've passed recently for water services, the easier installations get. But given the age of most of the infrastructure we have on the coast, it's presented a significant challenge.
GM Rosenblum?
Yes. In addition, just in addition to what Minister Waldover indicated in terms of, in response to the comment about continuing increased cost, Manager Waldover highlighted it in the presentation, but we've, since last several weeks, we've hired a contractor to do ground penetrating radar and radio location services to identify where leaks might be in the ground. And instead of that, the first picture you might on the slide deck was a big trench in front of somebody's property. That has been those kind of trenches have been constructed on a multitude of properties within Seychelles, just to identify where is the water service connection, because we cannot find anything here. And you can imagine that the cost to subsequently, when all the material is factored out, to then put in fresh material and restore the pavement that might have been there, or the sod, the grass, or whatever. That has a substantial cost to it. So we recently used the other technologies to identify where in the ground where is there disturbed ground, and usually that's where something was dug in the past. And as a result, we've had 18 properties looked at within a couple of days. They were able to identify 16, and 2 were not able to be identified. And I think those are candidates for installations, because we just have no clue where the water service connection is. So I think we have to install them inside there. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate that graph that was in the slides. I think that helps to inform the information that's in the staff report. I have a whole world of questions, many of which I'm not going to be allowed to ask in this meeting, but I guess I'll start with, before the project started, I remember, I don't know whether it was SCRD staff or contractors, coming through neighborhoods and marking out both on the shutoffs as well as on the asphalt in front of the home where all of the shutoffs were. And so I guess my question is, like, how come we didn't know where these shutoffs were before the project even started? Because I assume that work was done for everybody, not just my street. And then the other question I've got, if our bylaw allows for us to be doing meters inside, why can't we do more of these installs that are the difficult ones inside? I've circulated it to directors, but Princeton is doing water metering right now. And it was going to be a $10 million project for them to put them in pits out at the property line the way we're doing it. And instead they opted to do it inside homes. And it ended up being, it's going to be a $2 million project because of that. And for any resident that objects, they have to pay the cost of putting it in a pit. And so I'm just wondering why that couldn't be an option to finish this project out. Thank you.
GM?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Director. This is phase 3 of a decade-long project, which started with the installation in Pender, and then electro areas, and now this sea shield. And when we started the program in Pender, the decision was made to put them outside to reduce the risk and to increase the potential for identifying leaks. Inside installation doesn't allow for identification of leaks on the main line, which is the primary source of leaks. When the project phase 3 was commenced, the outside installation process was continued. The bylaw does indeed allow for inside installation, and as I indicated before, we're definitely now looking at where can we install inside in a responsible way. It totally depends on the configuration within the house, where and if it can be installed, but we're definitely looking at that as a cost-saving measure. So in combination with the other technologies I just mentioned, we are really taking a pragmatic approach of how to get the remaining meters installed as at a low cost as possible without substantially increasing the liability to the SRD. But it's a balancing act. But yes, we are definitely considering some inside installation, even though we realize that we might then lose some capacity to identify some leaks. And I turn it over to Manager Waldorf to talk about the blue dots.
Thank you. So with regards to the mark out, my understanding is that was done preliminarily by the contractor. They were given lists of the areas and they developed their own priority list, and their supervisors went out for their install crews and did those locates. Another helpful piece of information that's visible on that graph, fairly early on in the project, we did recognize that we had a significant number of difficult to locate meters where the contractor had gone out with the addresses and the service information and was unable to locate it. But as you'll see on the graph, the number of tracked locate issues declines quite quickly. And at the point where we were before on this project, we were dealing with multiple locates in a day, many tens in a week sometimes, and the cost of those were very minimal. So the steep escalation we saw towards the end of the year was a very unexpected spike.
Yes. GM Rosenman?
Thank you. In terms of lessons learned and what can we and what's being learned what can we learn and what can we provide to other local government in terms of advice, I recently had a conversation of one of the senior officials within Neptune, our prime contractor and the provider of the water meters, and they were twofold. They were surprised about the amount of meters that we were not able to quickly identify. I think that has something to do with the slope of some of the streets where we are working on, where water meters might be installed or water service connection might be installed very deep, and then just the properties were infilled afterwards. They didn't see that kind of situation in a lot of other communities. But at the same time, they were very, very, very pleased with the fact that we had last year 7% reduction in the seasonal water supply, just because of the fact we were able to identify leaks and address them. And they said that's a success story that they have not seen in other communities. So that's I think that's an compliment for our community in terms of, and I think that's I think that's a real benefit for our community of having the meters outside.
Thank you. I'll just take an opportunity to ask the question. I don't see people with their hands up. On page 19, it mentions that if we went ahead with this in 2026, that it would delay other projects. Do we know what projects were on the block if we go ahead?
Thank you. It will really depend on how many actual complex things we have left over after we did more of the ground penetrating radar work. We really hope that because of that unknown component, it's hard to actually completely say which of the project will be delayed and which not. But currently, our manager, Waldorf, is managing this project and managing some other projects, and there might be some slight delays in other projects, but we don't foresee that entire projects will have to be delayed until next year.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Director Bax.
Yeah, thank you. So this, what's before us now is an ask of almost 10% of the project cost increase. At this point, I think that the best we can do is to try to finish the job as quickly as possible for as cheap as possible. And so I'd like to see all those options explored. I know that, there are options within this item that talk about how we can pay for the overruns. So I think I'd like to get down to that business of figuring out what we're going to approve and how we're going to approve it. I see Director Toth wants to speak too, but I'd like to see, we don't have a choice. I want to see, I know that there's a talk about buying all the meters this year, which I think is a brilliant idea. We're going to need them, so we should buy them. Even if we don't install them this year, then, and even if we can't install some of them, then we're going to need replacements for the ones that we do have every now and then down the road. I encourage that, and I encourage inside installation. I encourage ways of making sure that there is that people understand that this is an essential part of our water system now, and that they need to embrace it. Anyway, that's my 2
Did you
cents.
have a question, or?
What do we do now?
Oh, what do we do now? Yeah, that's something we're going to have to decide after we, everybody is comfortable talking with our experts here. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm almost ready to move most of the recommendations, but I do have one question first. Looking at recommendation 5, which is the archaeological monitoring service agreement, I know it's only a $140,000 increase, but considering the contract is already at almost $1.1 million, I'm wondering if staff can share any conversations they may have had about negotiating to get a better rate on the last bit, or, you know, like I said, $1.1 million is a lot of money for archaeological work already. Do we really need the extra $140,000? Thank you.
Would staff like to comment on that one?
Thank you. As indicated in the report, part of the substantial increase in the line item for archaeological assessment had to do with changes in the Heritage Conservation Act in 2019 that were not factored into the budget when it was adopted at about the same time. Based on the fact that a lot of the meters are installed within areas with high heritage value to the Seychelles Nation, there's been a lot of situations where additional archaeological assessments were required to to ensure that those heritage values were adequately protected. As part of this process, the project manager, the prior project manager, and our archaeological consultant developed an extensive screening process to identify high, medium, and low value or risk areas, and the archaeological consultant took a risk-based approach in terms of where they would have additional monitoring on site and where not. So what we're currently left with is really a high estimate. The 140 is really a higher estimate than we think that we need, and we accounted for some unforeseen expenditures in there. But I think we foresee that, especially with some more inside installations to come, that number can be substantially reduced. And we increased it a little bit more than we included a substantial contingency allowance because we didn't want to come back to the board again.
Yes, thank you. Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate staff answering that. I'm, like I said, I have lots of thoughts on this. If you look at the chart on page 17, the changes from, May 2025 to May 2026, like it's an extra $1.6 million in the small metering. It's an extra almost, $550,000 in locating the service connections. And it's also drawing down the contingency by 1.35. So it's actually more than just a 10% increase because we're also converting that contingency into contract. I'm going to move recommendations 2 through 6 at this time, because I think we have to have a conversation about recommendation 1 if we're going to move forward, how we're funding. But I think everything else on that list is fairly straightforward. So recommendations 2 through 6.
You're not including 7 yet?
Not yet, because for how the financial plan gets amended is going to depend on what we do with
What we do with
recommendation
number 1?
1.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yes? Any discussion on these? Yes, Director McMahon?
Yeah, a quick question for staff. In a nutshell, why did staff not recommend option 3, which is to defer the really complicated installations?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Deferring the remaining installations to a later year will definitely impact our ability to bill those residents or those users as of January 1st next year. Our bylaw allows for anybody that doesn't have a functioning meter because of a decision by the SRD to be billed a flat rate. So it doesn't mean that there's no billing for those properties in place. They would be billed a flat rate, but the benefit of having leak detection capabilities and implementation of full volumetric billing as of January 1st, as directed by the board, is currently the primary reason for not recommending option 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call the question then. Sorry. Did you have another question, Donna? Or sorry, Director McMahon?
Yeah. If it's only a small number of properties and we can bill them the flat rate, is this the best use of our resources right now? We've got so many other projects on the go, especially utility projects, that I just wonder whether putting this much effort into the last handful of connections is our best option right now. I don't know what any of the other directors think.
Just a question for you, follow-up with you question though. Would that thoughts be included in 2 to 6, or would that be something we should be discussing on number 1? Your thoughts on that?
No, that's a different option. It was the third option, option 3, which is different. It's to defer. So that's why I'm asking, is why we should go ahead now rather than deferring.
I don't see anything in here, though, that says that we're going to go ahead now in 2 to 6, except for the audit of where we need to go. That's why I was curious here. Yes, Director Toth?
Thank you. And I mean, honestly, that's part of why I didn't include recommendation 1, because I understand where Director McMahon is coming from, and I don't necessarily disagree with those thoughts. I mean, if you look at the report on page 16, you know, properties with non-collaborative owners, well, okay, you can pay a flat rate of $5,000 a year until you change your mind. I think, yeah, I felt that recommendations 2 through 6 were a package, sort of separately from how the program proceeds, if it proceeds. So that's why I was moving those ones. Thanks.
That's, yes. Oh, thank you. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Just for procedural clarity, I heard the director move numbers 2 through to 6, but I didn't hear it seconded, so I'm curious if
Yes,
it's on the floor for debate.
Director Sanford.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Recommendation 2 says to support completion of outstanding installations prior to the implementation of volumetric billing in January 2027. So that says to me that we're going to do it this year, 2026.
I took it that we were just going to do the water meter auditing, but I guess this also is suggesting that we're going to implement volumetric billing in January 2027. But I think we would do that, Mike. The reason I thought that this was fine is that we can put volumetric billing in place without the people that don't have meters. So I thought that that was quite reasonable. Yes, Director Stanford.
In response to Director McMahon, considering option 3, I think this is a fairness issue that we need to be able to address with everyone. And I also want to see any option we can to reduce leakage be uniform across our constituency. I understand we're looking at a 7% reduction so far, but my questions to staff would be, are we continuing to find leaks at the same rate? Will that benefit continue to grow once this is all in place? Because I also heard anecdotally from Gibson's that they are now looking at a 50% reduction in their water usage because of finding leaks. So I think it's so important to get these installed, and that is our primary way of reducing water usage, and I want to see it go forward. So that's a question to staff about whether we will continue to find leaks at the same rate.
Yes.
Thank you. We are continuing to find large leaks. Last month, staff identified a 90,000 liters a day leak, and it was fixed within several weeks. So we continue to find those large leaks anywhere in the system. And what we're noticing is since volumetric billing, and that's as per expectations, that since volumetric billing is implemented in North South Pender, we see an uptick of people actually connecting with us. Like, I have to pay a volumetric portion now as of April 1st over my first quarter, and I have a leak. So I want to fix my leak because I don't want to pay that additional amount. And so having meters in place and having a volumetric system in place allows for us to identify larger leaks and residents themselves to and incentivize them to continue to fix leaks. So from that perspective, I can confirm that 7% will be the year-over-year number, but yes, it will be definitely in the order of magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
I'm struggling, and my math may be wrong here, but it looks like we're having a 10% project budget lift in order to deal with 1% of connections. And that, I just wonder at the cost benefit of that. I really do. I mean, ideally, yes, of course, we want to get all the meters in as quickly as possible. But if there are a small number of peculiar situations, through no fault of the property owners in the vast majority of cases, maybe they're just going to have to wait.
No, no question. Yes, that's a good observation, though, I'll tell you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Well, and speaking further to that, I guess this is part of the auditing process and the recommendations. The bottom of page 18, there were 50 properties identified in the rural areas that never had meters installed. So somebody dropped a ball somewhere, because even if they had continued at a few meters a year, they would have all, they mostly would have been taken care of already. And I think I agree about, the equity piece, but at what cost? Like if these are, if these end up being $50,000 a meter, is it worth it? That's a lot of water that has to leak. Yeah, this is kind of a no-win scenario in my mind when we look at the cost escalation here for the end of the project.
Yes. Director Bax.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur that there are some really tough issues that we're facing right now. The recommendations, as the Director Toth has put forward, don't speak to how the project's going to be completed, which is something that that's outside of our purview as a board. But we can make recommendations to get the work done. This, should this motion pass, it tells staff to do the work this year, get it done. But it doesn't say that we can defer some of the installations that are very problematic, and we can do interior installations that are going to be much cheaper. For one thing, I don't believe there would be any charge for archaeological work on an interior installation, unless they come across grandma's whatever it is. But I know that staff understands the feeling of the board that this needs to be done in the most economical fashion possible, because we've already put a lot of strain on our taxpayers as it is. And that is what's going to come up in recommendation number 1.
Yes, that was actually my thoughts, is that we'll be discussing that on 1. I think that's what we're trying to decide, is if that is what we're going to talk about in 1 and look after 2 to 6 now. Yes, Director McMahon?
I'm just wondering if we should separate out the meter installations in the rural areas versus seashell. Partly because it sounds like, and staff can confirm, that the remaining 50 meters in the rural areas are not particularly difficult installations, and we have the opportunity to get those finished and to fund them through whatever they're calling gas tax these days, and put that to bed, and then separately wrestle with the issue with the seashell meters. Am I correct about those 50 meters in the rural areas?
Staff?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Maybe I can clarify why those 50 meters are still planning to be installed. As part of the majority of the meters in the elected areas were installed between 2016 and 2018. At that time, not all properties where there were situations where there were complex scenarios where there were piggyback installations with a property providing water to another property. At that time, there was no incentive to identify those kind of and to resolve those kind of issues. Currently, because of the implementation of volumetric billing, there is. So what it means is that those kind of situations we have to install. There are some legacy meters that we have to install. Some have been are broken at the moment, so we have to replace them. And we went through a similar process in North South Bender last year, where we installed a couple of dozen new meters on properties that were where meters were failed, or the source connection was in, the setter was in, but the meter itself was never put in. So yes, the majority of those installations will be most likely straightforward replacement or new installations, but in a way less complex scenario than in a more urban setting as the Seashot one.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that we're still putting meters in North and South Pender, and it's been quite a while. I think that even when we finish this, we'll probably find a few more. Because once you start, I found from my experience in North and South Pender, once you start billing, people pay a whole lot more attention. So the things pop up that we just couldn't foresee, unique situations. Any other questions? Any changes to the motion? No? Then I guess I'll call the question on 2 to 6. All those in favor? Any, all opposed? Would you like that recorded, Director McMahon? Yes, thank you. So that takes care of 2 to 6. Now, anybody want to take a cut at 1?
Chair, could I suggest maybe we just take 5 minutes to refuel our coffees and regroup before we dig into the really, really hard decision today?
Okay, good idea. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Thank you, and welcome back to the Committee of the Whole on May 14th. We're back to talking about the Universal Metering Program Phase 3 project amendments. Looking for questions. Yes. Director McMahon.
Actually, I would like to try a motion here. I would like to move that the installation of the remaining meters in the electoral areas be completed in 2026 and funded from Community Works funds. So I think we have the opportunity to move that forward. The uncommitted balances for each area is in the table on page 25. So each of the electoral areas has more than sufficient funds to cover this. I realize it's not completely equitable with the municipal situation, but we have the opportunity to get this project done with money that's in hand without further debt, I hope.
Thank you. First of all, I think we should, okay.
Proposed
Looking for
wording for
clarification
this.
then?
Proposed
Jim?
wording for this is included on page 25 of the report and the top of page 26. And that also includes the proposed apportionment.
Okay, thank you. So
Number 2 and number 3 of the recommendations is listed there.
okay, Director Toth.
Thank you. I'm just looking for clarity because the recommendation on 25 talks about the, apportionment for use, community, sorry, come back to me.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion? Yes? Do we have a seconder for the motion?
Yes.
Okay, let's go into the discussion then. Anybody have a question? Yes, Director Bax?
Thank you. So I see the apportionment on page 25, and I was wondering if staff can tell me what the numbers of, so this is 50 areas, 50 houses that haven't had meters installed. And so what are the numbers in each area? I just want to make sure that this apportionment is fair to all our directors.
Thank you. I don't have the numbers at hand, but this apportionment is based on the apportionment of the 50 meters over the different areas.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yes, Director Toth.
Thank you. I think I figured out what my question was. Looking at the top of page 26, it talks about the apportionment for community works funds based on areas. It's only about $250,000. And so just seeking clarity, the remainder of the lift is coming from long-term debt? Or is that not the motion that was made? Because I heard commentary that there was recommendations here that we could use, but I'm just clarifying if Director McMahon was trying to grab everything or just deal with the rural portion at the moment.
Director McMahon is nodding her head, talking about the rural portion only. Yes. Director Gavious?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm going to oppose this motion. Just looking at the Area B uncommitted balance, Area B has some very pricey items coming, and I would prefer to keep the money in the pot for those. And we've committed a lot of the Community Works funds to the Langdale Well project, and I would prefer that we take capital reserves to finish this. It's not that much money, and just because for my area, Area B will have to foot the bill for a new fire hall, and I would much prefer keeping that money in that pot for that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
Director Rex?
yeah, my question is that, can we break this costing up so that each director can make a decision based on their area and their works fund? Because I can see that Director Gabias has a point, that she has this fund that she has earmarked for other projects. And I would be amenable to taking my Canada Works fund and paying for the installation of the meters that are within my area, rather than using reserve. But is that fair to everybody? I don't know.
Yes, I'd like to hear from our CAO, please.
So on page 12 at the top is actually the apportionment per area based on what was allocated with a suggested recommendation. And so any variation of that could be modified.
Oh. Yes, Director McMahon, I think it's your turn here.
Yes, I would be amenable to amending the motion, because I wouldn't support pushing one of the electoral area directors into spending funds that they don't want to spend. I'm fine with spending Area E funds, and I see Director Bax is fine with Area D funds. Perhaps we could hear from Area F.
Yes, Director Stanford, please.
Thank you. Mine is the smallest apportionment, but then I also have the least amount of uncommitted balance and always have horrendous projects coming up. So for me, I'm supportive of this process, but I was interested in further comment that for Area B, they put money in towards the Langdale well. Did you say that? I'm trying to, I thought you mentioned that when you said why you were against it. And so I just want to suggest that also that Langdale well is there to support water to Area B.
Sorry, if you could repeat the question?
It's just a comment. I am in support of going it region by region or area by area, but I also was interested in the comment from Director Gabias that they had already put money into the Langdale well, and my point was, well, the Langdale well is supporting water supply to Area B.
I think, Director Toth, is it okay if I go to Director Gabias here? Okay, sorry. Well, it really was your turn, but I'll get you next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to respond, and I didn't mean like it went, it's just the Community Works Fund went to water project, I guess it's, and then now putting further money to water project. It's nothing to do with the location of the project. Thanks.
Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. As you guys are nickel and diming how you want to contribute a few bucks from your gas tax, you're still going to have about $1 million that needs to be funded somehow. And so, you know, if Area D contributes $77,000 and then we fund the rest from something like reserves, that's still Area D money that's contributing to reserves. And so I think from an equity piece, funding the whole thing from either a loan or reserves or something like that is probably the fairest way of going about it, so that you're not being sort of double dipped, so to speak. That's just my thought. From a procedural question for the corporate officer, are Director Inkster and I even allowed to vote on this? Because it's water, but it's gas tax funding. Thanks.
Okay, corporate officer.
Thank you for the question. Because we're in committee, the procedure bylaw says that you will be entitled to a vote at committee. It might be different voting once we hit board and we're talking about finances, but it is the participants, and this is administration and operation of a service.
Thank you. Director McMahon?
I'd like to suggest that to clear the decks here, perhaps we defeat my motion and move on.
Okay. Let's have a vote on the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that motion's defeated and off the books. So anybody ready for another one? Yes, Director Bax.
Thank you. Now, at this point, we're trying to save taxpayer money. Reserves, if we use reserves or if we use long-term debt, I know that in this document there is it talks about the cost of these of each of these items. Can anyone off the top of their head let me know which way is the cheaper way to go? Is it long-term debt or is it from reserves? I know we have to build reserves back up again, but it looks to me like this is going to cost, if we go long-term debt, it's going to cost the taxpayer, every taxpayer we have about $10 a year for the next 15 years. That's the math that I see in here. Which is cheaper? Can anybody answer me that?
CAO, perhaps you could help us with this?
Yeah, so any contributions or from reserves comes through the parcel tax for the rates. And so if we deplete the reserves in a more expedited fashion, because these are somewhat unplanned in the capital renewal plan, so we would be depleting the reserves that are already in a very precarious state for regional water based on the draft comprehensive capital plan that we provided. And so we'd probably be looking to increase the parcel tax contribution at a higher rate. If we did get it from long-term debt, same thing. We have estimated a certain amount for paying off the debt. And so interest rates do continue to be higher than when we started and approved this particular project. So the parcel tax will be a little higher. Community Works funds are through federal funding, so indirectly still through taxpayers in a different way, but would not be, it would be the least impact to the service as far as parcel tax goes in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? Does anybody want to take a shot at a motion? Hi, Director Inkster, did you have your hand up?
Chair, Director Bax just wasn't clear on the answer. And so I just encouraged him to ask again. This is a big discussion as to how we proceed. So just think we should all be informed and, I'm glad to hear though from the CEO that the reserves are underfunded in her estimation. So we may have to be looking at borrowing. It's just that's an additional cost to the user. Thanks.
Just a question and clarification for this one. If we did use reserves and we happen to get a grant in the future, then we could simply not use the reserves. Is that an option?
It's always an option. I think that part of the conundrum is we don't have a reserve. I think the question was, what is the cheapest option? And debt, you're going to increase your debt, so that's a no-no. By using reserves, you're just essentially, delaying contributions to the reserve. But again, I appreciate that's a board decision, but likely staff will be coming to repatriate that fund. So in essence, it'll be the same impact. Will be the recommendation. What the decision is obviously a board decision.
Thank you. Director McMahon?
Yeah, we're wrestling with two different things here. One is, what are we going to do? And the second one is, how are we paying for it? So I still favor proceeding with the rest of the meters in the rural areas. I don't know if that is worth a separate motion right now, and then we can argue about how to pay for it, but having had to vote against my last motion, I'm feeling a little incompetent, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering just procedurally what the impact would be of delaying this for 2 weeks. Referring the remainder of this to the next committee of the whole. Because that would give us some time to think about how we might want to proceed with the final portion of it. But I also don't want to, I don't know, maybe it'll be $14 million if we wait 2 weeks. So, thank you. I guess that's my question.
I think the question is what would happen to the project if we did delay it 2 weeks? Would it get more expensive? Would it delay the completion?
Thank you for the question. There's a third piece to this, and I have not. Last year, the board approved the installation of large vaults. Those large vaults, and so those are for large commercial complexes. Their contracts has been awarded. We have the funding for that. All is proceeding well. If you look at option 3, there's a $90,000 archaeological component in there, which is even if we were to pause, we recommend that to advance. And the reason for that is that as part of those large vaults installs, there are some additional archaeological work required. So that's the only, so that work is currently paused pending update of the archaeological contract amendment for that amount. So, but can we wait another 2 weeks for that to proceed as well? Yes.
Director Toth.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to clarify, we've already moved recommendations 2 through 6, which did include a budget for archaeology increase.
Okay.
That's not on the board agenda today, so I assume that'll be on the board agenda in 2 weeks' time. Regardless, it was really just around recommendation 1 and what the impacts would be of deferring recommendation 1 for two weeks.
There's no impact to that.
Okay, yes, Director McMahon? Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Okay. Director Inkster, and then.
Thanks, Chair. Good. I'm happy with us waiting a couple of weeks. And what I would ask then, because staff may be wondering why we would delay 2 weeks, although they've heard the discussion, is I just need, I would, if possible, just need additional information on the cost of borrowing, and I think we've been told what the rate change will be, what the cost of borrowing was. I had asked earlier about the cost of borrowing in terms of the interest charged, but also to look at our reserves and in terms of the projected need for reserves that we received about 2 months ago and what this means to those reserves based on our annual replenishment rate. The CEO had said that staff would repatriate some of the money that we took out, and that makes sense because we're needing to do that for infrastructure, but would the repatriation have to be accelerated, or would it repatriate to recover the funds in a timely manner if we did pull it out, or are we knocking it back? That's one of the things that I need to know before I make the decision to borrow or take from reserves. We've already heard that it's probably a problem, but we can probably look at how we put funds back in reserves to deal with this. We're asking too much from users, and we're also increasing our taxes regularly as well as extra costs. We have to figure out a way to lessen the impact on homeowners. Thanks.
Director Bax and then Director McMahon.
Thank you, Director Inkster. That sounds like a great piece of juicy work for our new CFO to dig into. And with that, I would move that we postpone this matter until our next meeting of the Committee of the Whole. This requires a seconder. No. Yes, it requires a seconder, and it is debatable.
Corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. In my understanding, you wish to refer the matter to a future committee for further discussion with respect to funding the continuation of this work? Is that the
That's
motion?
the motion.
That is procedurally allowed? if
Do we
the
need a
board
seconder
chooses?
for that?
Correct.
Oh, I see a seconder. Okay. Yes, Director McMahon?
The funding is one unresolved question, but the other unresolved question is whether we should pause the installation of the difficult water meters, or whether we should try to complete them this year. And that is the other question that we have to dig into. I hate to say that. Yeah.
I think, yeah, if we pass this motion to defer, what exactly are we deferring? All of everything we've done so far, or is there some particular portion we can accept? Yes, it's a question of our corporate officer.
So the recommendation from 2 through to 6 has been approved. It won't go to board for another 2 weeks for adoption, so nothing will be acted on that until at least the May 28th board meeting. Recommendation subsections numbers 1 and 7. This is my understanding of the items you want to refer to the next committee of the whole, presumably, which would be May 28th.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. And I think between now and then, that gives all of us time to contemplate our questions around, borrowing costs or what the balance is, or, Director McMahon's comments about whether we want to defer the complex installations or keep chipping away at them. I think it was option 1B basically asks for staff to just sort of keep chipping away at them within base budget. I heard staff earlier mention that the new water rates bylaw does allow for some folks to remain on flat rate billing. And so, these are all pieces to the puzzle that I think we need, time to discuss and debate. And honestly, we're, running out of time today. So I think we owe it to have a more holistic conversation when we can give time for it. Thanks.
Yes, Director Bax?
Yeah, I think it gives us a couple of weeks to mull this all over, and perhaps without stepping outside of my lane, seeing a new report that's been edited down to be a little simpler, removing some of the things that are pertinent to parts 2 to 6 that we've already approved, and only concentrating on parts 1 and 2, on 1 and 7. I mean, I don't want to tell staff what to do, but it would be nice to see something a little more concise at this point.
I think that's a CAO question. I believe Director Bax was suggesting that we would have an agenda item with a report that actually is just focusing on the last decisions. Is that a possibility?
I think you need to make a motion to that. Yeah, you need to make a motion to that because you've just referred essentially the whole report to a next, so we wouldn't generate new information. And even amending how information is, if you can give us some direction to that, we can most certainly just provide the pertinent information that you'd like to review. And again, it's important that the board is in consensus with that.
Okay, thank you. I think that would fall on our chair to assist us in getting that done. Any other discussion then? Are everybody comfortable that we vote on this, or Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I don't need staff to write another report. I think, most of the information is here. Discussion that we've had as a board, I think there's been a couple of questions that have sort of surfaced. We like to try and warn our staff about certain questions that might be coming. And so I think there's a good opportunity if we do have some questions that aren't covered off in the staff report, just send them in and they can be primed to answer them next time we see this, or they can respond to us in an email. I don't need another staff report. I just need time to contemplate the options here.
Yes, that is kind of standard process anyways, as we do an agenda review, so I think that's a solid suggestion. Any other comments? Yes, Director McMahon?
As it might give some of us directors some opportunity to draft some possible motions in advance of the meeting so that we start from a more organized place.
Director Stamford? No, you're okay? Okay, then, I don't see any more hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm not very good at putting off tough questions, so. So that means we're now moving to item 4.3. Whatever page that is. Page 28. So, Chief Administrative Officer and Corporate Officer, you have a presentation for us?
Just an introduction, Chair. So this particular report is to provide a proposed new bylaw for the officers of the regional district. This particular outcome is a result of reviews of our various bylaws in the organization, and hence the exempt employment bylaw has been a bylaw overseen by the board, and as time, legislation, labor standards have evolved, this is essentially the contract that the regional district enters into for its exempt staff. As a best practice, and over the last couple of years, we've been internally reviewing this particular document and working with our legal team, and in front of you today is some suggested next steps as part of the revision, which includes future bylaw amendments and internal policies. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Director Bax and then Director Stamford.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward. My question is, now I've read the report and I'm not sure exactly what it's for. I would like if you can explain in layman's terms how this is going to change our relationship with the three officers that are mentioned within the report, and how it's going to change your relationship as CAO with the other two officers mentioned in this report. And so, in layman's terms, what's the purpose of this?
A couple of things. One is to, I think, separate governance from administration. So that's step number one. One is to, I think, align what you're already doing with local government and legislative framework as it relates to the roles of the officers of the regional district. And so you have various bylaws right now that speak to that. One is your delegation bylaw, one is this particular bylaw here, and then there's mixed into all of that is some contractual employment standards language. And so what we're trying to do is, I think, separate the administration from the governance, and to also formalize what is essentially in legislation in your bylaws, and so to properly align those. So it's part housekeeping and part, I think, separating those governance from administration.
I'm not sure if we're ready to go into the actual bylaw language, but I had a question about the difference between the CAO being able to instruct council without connection to the board, whereas corporate officer requires CAO and board approval. So I just wondered where the board fits into legal counsel coming from the CAO.
Yeah, so some of that is already outlined within your delegation bylaw. So when we were reviewing some of these, what we wanted to make sure is we weren't contradicting existing bylaws, because otherwise we'd be amending multiple bylaws. So what we're trying to do is, in this particular one, is be consistent with what's already been delegated through the delegation bylaw and what's outlined within the Local Government Act.
So what this is essentially saying is the CEO can go to legal counsel without informing or any discussion with the board. Is that what it's saying?
From an operational basis, yes. And so we do that on a standard practice on a regular basis to get advice, to actually advise the board. Where the board is involved is whether or not there's any implications to risk. And if there's any financial consequence or risk to the organization, we most certainly bring that to the board, and that's within your purview of your fiduciary duties of the regional district. So there would be no change to what we have been applying. It's just, I think, formalizing that particular arrangement.
Thank you, Chair. This is one of those really fascinating things that was actually brought to light to me during the District of Sechelt's provincial advisor appointment, because every officer that you have named in your officer bylaw, the board becomes responsible for. And so part of that, the Local Government Act, sections 234 through 242, I think it is, are very specific about the board's obligations to officers under the officer bylaws. And so from that perspective, it gets pretty weedy if you've got more people within that officer bylaw than really you need to have in there. And so, the recommendation, at least for Sechelt, was to pull some of those people out of our officer bylaw, because it's not our responsibility as an elected body to oversee our, manager of, planning and development, right? But they're named in the bylaw, so they become an officer that we are responsible for the oversight of. So I appreciate the cleanup. I appreciate where this is going. And I'm going to move the recommendation on page 28 as presented.
Thank you. I see a seconder. Yes, Director Inkster.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to speak before you asked for that, but you didn't look this way, Chair. Nevertheless, this is just, to me, this is just housekeeping and notification by our staffs, and I trust the administrative staff on the recommendation, so I'll be supporting it. Thanks.
Thank you, and my apologies. So we have a motion and we have a seconder. Any further discussion? Call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? No? That passes. When do we do for a second, third reading? That'll be at the board, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, we have no communications, no new business, no in camera. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Yes, I see it. And a seconder, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.